Attorney General Jeff Sessions pushing back on states legalizing marijuana. Recreational pot now legal in 8 states and the District of Columbia. Another 22 states allow only medical marijuana, and 15 allow a lesser medical marijuana extract. But this week, Sessions sent a memo to U.S. attorneys. He reminded that federal law prohibits the possession and sale of marijuana. This effectively repeals the 2013 Obama administration policy that refrained from prosecuting individuals if they're complying with their state's marijuana laws. So what does this mean for the future of legalization? Well, my next guest has a strong opinion. He says, fire Jeff Sessions. You know Ron Paul. He's the former congressman from the great state of Texas, presidential candidate. In 2011, he introduced legislation with Congressman Barney Frank to remove criminal penalties for marijuana use. It's great to have you back, Congressman. Thanks for being here. Why must Sessions go?
Well, because he represents something that is so un-American as far as I'm concerned. The war on drugs, to me, is a war on liberty. I think that we overly concentrate on the issue of the drug itself, and I concentrate on the issue of freedom of choice on doing things that are of high risk. And we permit high risk all the time. I mean, if you look at study of philosophy and religion, that's very risky stuff. There's bad ideas out there. Generally, we allow people to eat what they want, and that is very risky. But we do overly concentrate on what people put into their bodies. So to me, it's an issue of liberty. And Jeff Sessions is not a libertarian. He's not a civil libertarian at all. And the war on drugs is a totally illegal system. And if you look at it carefully, our traditions has been that the government recognized that we don't have the right to regulate the sale of drugs. In 1914, when he passed the Harrison Act, it was done over taxes. Tax them. That's how we'll get them to quit using it. 1937, same thing with marijuana. The same thing when they wanted to manipulate Obamacare. They put taxes on it. They don't they don't endorse the concept they have a right to do all these things. So I think it's very questionable constitutionally. They shouldn't be doing it, but it's so terrible. It is an excuse to violate civil liberties wholesale, and Jeff Sessions has been one of the worst. And usually I don't ever get involved in these personality squabbles, but this is one major setback. Obama did something decent there. He backed off, and I thought that was a good move, and Sessions wants to reverse that.
What I wanted to say, Congressman, is in the context of the pot case, I agree with you, and I think it tramples on states' rights. But in the Wall Street Journal today, there's an editorial that I think raises a valid point. Let me read a paragraph to you from the Journal. It says, social mores are changing and a majority of Americans support legalizing pot. But instead of taking the cop-out of blaming Mr. Sessions, legalizers in Congress ought to have the courage of their convictions and try and decriminalize pot nationwide. Let Senators Cory Gardner and Kamala Harris persuade their colleagues that's what's good for Colorado and California is what's good for the country. Don't they have a point? This is Congress's fault.
Well, in a way, but what if it's unconstitutional? They shouldn't even be doing it. That's all you need is somebody that's dedicated to the Constitution. But if you look at the Rohrabacher law that was passed a couple of years ago, it really opens the door for Obama to have done what he did. And besides, they shouldn't do it. It's bad results. It's attack on liberty. It's unconstitutional. And people should have the right or the responsibility of dealing with what is dangerous. Once you get into this thing about government's going to protect us against ourselves, there is no protection of liberty. People are frightened about liberty. They always want it to be taken care of. But just because you legalize something doesn't mean everybody's going to do it. And then if you look at the consequences of the war, why don't the people just look and read and study prohibition? You know, they changed the Constitution because they knew this was not the right thing for the federal government to do. So they write an amendment to the Constitution. Total failure. And the war on drugs is every bit as bad and worse, but we have made progress. I brag about the fact that the libertarian message about allowing people to make these choices has been a good move, and now we've even introduced the notion of nullification. That should be a legal option, a constitutional option. The states are nullifying the intrusiveness of the federal government. So I think there's some great things that have been happening, and I predict that Sessions is not going to be victorious on this. And unfortunately, it's for a reason that I don't get excited about. It's because the states want to collect all those taxes. So it becomes this tax issue. I want to legalize freedom. I don't want to just do it because the states are going to get more revenues, but it's going to help us, cancel out this bad move by Sessions.
I want to hit you with a totally unrelated subject for a quick reaction. When I think of Ron Paul, I think of the gold standard. I know your view on that issue. Bitcoin is all the craze. I'm going to be talking about it later in the program. Give me Ron Paul's Cliff's Note version on Bitcoin.
Well, first thing is, when in Congress, I introduced legislation to allow competing currencies because I abhor the system that we have. The official counterfeiters at the Federal Reserve, that is big mischief and a big problem. So the people should have the right to choose. And they did originally when money started. Then they picked gold and silver. But governments always took it over and abused that standard and monopolized it and then destroyed it, which we have done in this country. So first, I want to legalize all those options on what people want to use as money, but no fraud. You can't commit fraud. That's the problem with the government. So there's a regulation on there. I think the jury's out on how far they're going to go with cryptocurrencies acting as money. Right now, I don't see it because in my studies of monetary history, it's always been something tangible. People want something tangible. When it's related to it, it works. But since 1971, it's not been tangible at all. It's been totally fiat, and that's why everything is a big bubble. Matter of fact, the big bubble comes from the quantitative easing, and all that money out there is also participating in blowing up the price of these cryptocurrencies. They're up to over $750 billion, and nobody has anything they can touch. So I would say it's questionable, but the principle is right. Somebody else is going to have to sort it out if it ever becomes money, but I have questions because historically, money should be something that's tangible, but it should be legal as long as there's no fraud.